So hello and welcome. This is Erica Glessing, and today I'm wearing my CEO of Happy Publishing hat, and I am so delighted to have with you. It's become one of my favorite authors of all time already for his very first book. And this book, for those of you who are able to see the interview, this is a beautiful book that was written about a worm, and I'm not joking, it's actually about a worm with the biggest personality you can even imagine, and a little girl. And there's a surprise ending. And my author, who's with me today, Sam Baker, this is his first book, but it was quite some time coming. Welcome, Sam. How are you?
Just fine.
So tell me a little bit about the silly adventures of Petunia and Herman the worm. Tell me a little bit about the story.
Well, it started when I was about 10. We made dill pickles every summer, so we needed lots of dill. And in the backyard, there were enormous worms. I call them worms, but they actually were caterpillars growing on the dill. And I was curious, and so I would take them off when they were what I thought was the end of their life cycle and put them in a shoebox and feed them until they went into the puma stage and watch them until they became beautiful black swallowtail butterflies. And many times I put them on my finger, let them climb on my finger, took them outside, and they flew away. When my children were about 2 and 4 in our station at Cape Canaveral, they wanted me to tell them a story rather than read it to them out of a book. So I created a story of Herman the Worm. And it evolved over the years. And then my son, and when I got a computer, my son said, "You got to start putting it down on paper." So I did, and made some changes and so forth. And this is the culmination of all that work. And it's been lots of fun.
I'm just so excited to have a storyteller with me because one of the things that showed up for me when I was looking at this was that storytelling is kind of a lost art. And I love the fact that you would sit and just sort of make up stories for your children when they were little. What can you tell someone who's kind of thinking about they'd like to tell stories? What advice can you give them? How can they get started storytelling?
Well, I think the computer makes it much easier to write your story now because the old typewriter, you couldn't go back and you couldn't correct your mistakes. You had to just type it and somebody come back later and type it over again. But with the computer, you can erase it, start over again. You can write a paragraph and insert it. It makes it so much easier. So my son was absolutely right. Now that I had a computer, I was a neophyte, but I learned how to do it. And as you notice, when you got to rough material, it had to be edited a lot.
So we have with us Sally Baker Simon. Welcome, Sally. How are you?
Awesome.
So, Sally, what's this been like for you to watch your 95-year-old dad basically start having a brand new dream and start fresh with a brand new book? What's that been like for you as his daughter?
Well, it's been really exciting. It's been fun to see it all come together and work with you and work with my dad worked with a friend of mine who did all the drawings and all the paintings rather in the inside of the book. And it was just fun to watch it as it kept evolving. So that's been really fun. And it's fun to get it out here and then plan a tour with my dad so that we can go around the country and promote the book and promote awareness of butterflies and stories.
One of the messages that I kind of see in the story, it looks like there's kind of a willingness to have family, even if it's not exactly like what you thought. Like in this case with Petunia, her mom has been in a car accident. She's not there anymore. How do you maybe talk a little bit about the story and the message from the book?
Well, there are a lot of messages in the book. Messages that what we taught our children when they were young, which I don't think is alien to many families. I put seatbelts in my car long before the government thought about them. Safety. When you go to sea as much as I do, you realize once you get out of sight of land, safety becomes the number one element because there's nobody there to help you if you need them. And family love. It's lost now in today's society. When I was a kid, after dinner, we all sat around the dining room table to do our homework and to play cards, and that was where the family activities was. We had a radio, but there wasn't very many programs you could listen to. And today, when the children were small, we used to try to do activities for them. Sally and Mike would be the best kids in the world if you promised them that they'd go fishing on the weekend.
You know, this kind of leads me. I love the story of the silly adventures of Petunia and Herman the Worm, and I'm not going to reveal. I'm just going to say it is a beautiful book. But what I'd like to ask you about, tell us a little bit about. I'm really curious about your career at Cape Canaveral. Tell us a little bit about that part of your life. I mean, that was pretty exciting, also.
Well, I got assigned to Cape Canaveral in 1962, 61, 62, and 63. My expertise was precise surveying, and our job was to locate all the tracking devices that control the missile launches. They all were on a grid pattern, and you just don't fire a missile up in the air and it goes into orbit. There's a window way up in the sky that you have to put the missile through, and it's important that your tracking devices all be on the same geodetic plane and coordinate system so that they can guide the missile into that little window, and then it can go into orbit. And it was an exciting time. We were there when Glen went up, and no missile launch was made without first my crew putting an azimuth in the guidance system. So we had a direct connection and a feeling of a responsibility and also of accomplishment.
So tell me, when you think about, Sally, when you think about kids reading this book, when you think about, maybe tell us a little bit about what your vision might be for what would be exciting for both of you. But Sally, go ahead and just take a little chance on what it's going to be like for you to take this book that was read to you, story told to you as a young girl, such a full circle story. Tell us a little bit about what that is going to be like for you.
Well, it's really fun that, like what you were saying, that Petunia has created a family, that they have, that there's an extended family. My dad grew up with the aunts and uncles, all up and down the same street. And so I think he said one time his sister was unhappy with somebody and they would go down the street and sleep over there. And so everybody knew where you were. But it's just the whole idea of love, and of unconditional love, of innocence, of sharing, and of people being good to one another, of the of just enjoying each other, no matter whether somebody is a talking caterpillar or what, but just that it's that life has many different messages, lots of ways that it comes to you and brings you happiness. And if you let it in, and some people didn't and crashed their cars, and other people did and had a much more fun time.
You know, I don't want to be too crazy about this, but it seems like part of the book also talks a little bit about just having kind of good manners. I mean, just kind of having a sense of respect. And tell us a little bit about that for you, Sam, as you're kind of telling the story. But it seems like also there was some messages in there about just kind of, you know, having good manners.
I think that all came from my mother, who was a very kind person. I was born in 1922 and 1929. 7 years later, the Depression came. My parents lost every nickel they owned. They lost the house. They lost the store. They lost my farm. My father lost his big farm. Yet, when beggars came around to the back door during the years following the Depression, my mother never turned any of them down, but she always had them do a little something to earn their meal, such as rake the backyard, pick up leaves in the front yard, just something to make them feel as though they weren't begging for food. She was a very kind person, always had her relatives in for Sunday meals, and always were looking out for people. Even though we didn't have much, I got a paper route when I was 8, delivering 126 papers a day. And on Friday, when there were shopping ads in there, I think the papers weighed as much as I did. And you learn from your parents, and I think that was part of it. And we had a wonderful colored woman. Emma didn't want to be called black. She wanted to be called colored, who was as kind and as gentle and as caring as any member of our family. As a matter of fact, Emma raised us. And it was a joy to see Emma have a contact with Sally and Michael when they were young as well.
Are you talking? Not, somehow you're not coming through.
Sorry. Okay.
So wait, there was one other thing that I think is also, in addition to all the manners, is I think there's just also a sense of respect of, you know, it's kindness, respect, and having, and maybe manners is not just table manners, but ways of being with one another, you know, so that people have a sense of civility or kindness, or just, it allows for more gentleness, I think.
So I'm going to ask you I have one more question. In your perfect dream world, what happens next? In your perfect dream world, the book is launching now. The book is out, getting to kids all over the world. What's your kind of like, what would be the most amazing outcome?
For people to discover love and love of one another, and forget about hate, forget about war. The world would, it's amazing if there was no war and no purchase of war equipment, there would be health care, there would be prosperity for everybody on the entire earth. Peace is an elusive word, but it can be achieved.
Thank you.